Okay, so what I'm going to do is on the assignment, I'm just going to do the assignment myself so that you guys can see how I would have done it. So I did put a 60-minute time here in order to complete it, but you guys really don't have to try to stick with it. Just try to finish the assignment, and I think after you finish it and you go through this, you might either see you've done it correctly or done it similarly, or you can see how you could have done it differently. So I'm just going to start from scratch. So I'm going to start a new project and everything so you guys can see from where I started. Okay. Let me start by clicking start assignment. This downloads resource files. I'm not sure where there's two, but you just have to click on one of them. I'm going to download this one. As soon as you go to this file and you click on, now let's open it with Chrome. You will see this is what the invoice should look like. So what I want to do is that as soon as you click on add new item, it should do have some kind of a pop-up, and once you click as soon as you add an item, it can go into this rows over here. So each product you add will have a new drop down. So in the brackets here, I also explained what I want to happen. For example, in the invoice, it should have a reference number here. So reference number can be the ID. If you want a specific field for that, you can insert that. There's nothing specific. Date of invoice, that will be decorated at, and due date will be decorated at field plus 14 days. So, and obviously here's the total of all the prices here combined. Here's 25% of the total, and here would be the the total minus 25%. So basically this amount minus this amount will be this amount. Okay, so what I'm going to start now is I'm going to start a new Laravel project. So I'm going to say install Laravel. So we always use this. Let me just go to wait, let me just delete this folder. I'm just going to create it over here. I'm going to call it assignment 1. All right. So let's just wait for this to complete. Okay, so after we are done, I just want to install VueJs so long. So what I'm going to do is just this composer require Laravel UI, and after I'm done with that, I'm just going to install Vue, PHP Artisan UI Vue. Let's just also do the scaffolding for authorization as well. Oh yeah, sorry, I did not actually go into my project, so I can just say cd assignment 1, or if you don't know how to do that, just navigate inside your folder and click shift and right click on the mouse, and it will say open PowerShell window here, open that, and you're also already inside the folder you need to be. Okay, so what I can do now is PHP Artisan. I just want to quickly see something. You see the Laravel UI installed in the wrong folder. Let me just quickly delete that. Let's first install it over here. And now let's go ahead and say PHP Artisan UI Vue auth. Now the scaffolding has been created. So now I can just, as it says here, just do an npm install. Okay, after we are done with the npm install, I just want to connect to the database. So as I showed before, you can go to SQL York. Okay, once you're in SQL York, you will see there's a list of all your databases. I have a lot of databases, but yours would probably look less. So you just you just click on create database. So I'm just gonna call it course assignment 1, and I just copied this because it will be important later. So I click create. So I open Visual Studio to navigate to my project. So my project is located under workspace, assignments, assignment 1, and here's my file. So I click on select folder. As soon as I open my folders, the first thing I want to do is click on environment and just sort out my database settings. So you will see the database is Laravel, but mine is course assignment 1. My username is root, my password is blank. So it depends what your password was. If your password was password, you just enter it here. But like I said, this is on your local machine. So yeah, okay. So the first part I usually do is I create the migrations first. So you will notice inside course assignment there's no tables, so let me do that first. So I'm doing this like PHP artisan migrate. The first table I want is invoice, but like I also mentioned before, I normally don't create just a migration. I usually create a model that also creates a migration as well. So I would say PHP artisan make model. Oh yeah, sorry, I know I made a mistake. If you wanted to create a migration, you would say make migration and then a migration name, create new, blah blah. But in this example I want to do a model. So the first migration or model I want to create is invoice. Always notice this is always singular and the tables will always be plural. Okay, so let me create that. So each invoice will have multiple items. So I will say invoice item. And then invoice items, each invoice item will have one product. So we can either call it just products, or what I usually do is to keep some kind of structure to know what's happening is that I can just create invoice item product. But it all depends on your structure. There's no right or wrong way, because if the product was used for something else, then this would make sense. But if your products will only be used for each invoice item, then I would suggest using this way, because now you know when looking at a table that this product belongs to the invoice item. So let's create that. So if you navigate back to database and migrations, you will see there's now a new list of migrations. So on default it already creates the users, the password, the failed jobs, and now we created the invoices, invoice items, invoice item products, and let's start with invoices. So like I mentioned in my previous class, there is a website that will show you all the types of migrations you can create, all the commands, and what we want is actually something simple. So I'm going to use the ID as the invoice reference number, so I'm not going to create a new field reference number. If you want to, you can. Let me quickly see on the example. So you can actually say something like fields like invoice 2, you can have John Doe or the other street, so you can actually have the person's details inside here. I mean, if you want to create a real flexible invoice item, then you would use a different table in order to store all the user's details and just reference it to this person. But this is just a quick example. I'm not going to insert the details of the person here. I just want to concentrate on this table structure over here, how to add, remove items, and to make this work. So at the moment in my assignment, I'm not going to worry about this or this. So basically this is all I need. So in the invoice items, it's going to be a bit different. And so I'm going to create a new table field called invoice ID. So it's going to be an integer, and then it's going to be invoice ID, and I'm going to leave it on the default, and it's going to not be nullable. So this means that there has to be a value inside invoice ID, otherwise it won't save, and that's what you want. So under invoice items, we also want other reference that is called invoice item product ID. So this will reference to this table over here. So each invoice item has one invoice item product ID. And then the other field we want is, we want the quantity. So as soon as someone creates an item, there should be a quantity inserted. And I'm going to add the price here as well. Actually missed on here is we can actually create the price, the total price of the invoice here as well. Let's call it amount. So this means that it will save the amount automatically to this. We can actually go deeper and also save the sub amount percentage and then the total amount. So this means that as soon as the invoice is saved, we can actually save all the details in here as well, so it's easier to pull from the database. So let's go ahead and do it that way. Okay, so now we have price in here, but price will also be in this table. And let me explain the logic why it's like that. So here we will have table string, and let's call it name, because each product will have a name, and let's make it a max characters. And it's not nullable, it has no default. The price should also be entered, and yeah, so on. So you're probably wondering, why is there a price in here and also in here? Well, but the logic is that, let's assume that you have a product called you sell a hat. Now normally the hat costs $25. Let's make it dollar. So it will pull into this items as soon as you create the invoice. It will have it will cost $25. And now the invoice makes sense, but eventually you decide to call to increase the price to $30. So all the existing invoice items will also increase to $30 if you didn't create its own field, if you pull it from this products table. So that means that all the previous invoices won't make sense, because now all the prices increased, but it was already paid for and everything. So you know, this should be kind of static to the invoice and not dynamic pulling all the prices from this. It's just on creation, it will take the price from this table and save it in here. All right, okay, so logically, if you don't understand what I mean by this, just ask me, but this is why this has a price and this has a price. All right. Okay, so basically this is all I need for now. This is just a list of all the products. Here it's all the logic. I have the quantity, the price, and which product it goes. So I will get the name of the product through this field. And in here, there's nothing else I need to know. Like I mentioned, if you wanted to pull in the user info or something like that, you would say something like client ID or user ID or whatever. But for this example, I won't be using this. Normally when I do a PHP artisan migrate, there's an error that happens locally. Let me just quickly see if it happens now. Artisan migrate. Yeah, so I always get this. I'm not sure why, but this gets fixed when I go to app providers, app service provider, and I just copy this, and under boot I just added this, and then for some reason it migrates. Wait, oh yeah, because it already created a migration. Let me just quickly delete that one. So I'm just going to delete this users table and run the migration over. Okay, so there it created everything. Okay, so back to my project. What is the next step? Well, the next step is probably to get this file to my project. So I'm just going to copy this, and on assignment, my project folder, I just go to resources, then on the resource I go to views. I'm just going to create a new folder over here and call it invoice. I'm going to paste it in here. I'm just going to rename the HTML to blade.php. And let me quickly see if it's there. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. Okay, there it is. And I just want to first create an index. So I'm going to create a new file called index.php. Sorry, .blade.php. Like I explained, if you don't put in Blade, it doesn't use the Blade system from Laravel. So it's important to use the Blade system. Otherwise, it will just be a static PHP file. And let's just close all these files. All right, okay. So for now, I just want to go to resource, roots and web. Let's first create a controller file for invoice. So I'm just going to call it PHP artisan make controller invoice controller. Okay. So once I go to controllers, invoice controller, I want to create a public function index and return the view. So it's return, I think I call it invoice and index. Let me just quickly make sure. Yeah, it's invoice and index. As you can see, there's nothing in here. Let's go back to the roots. So under web, I'm just going to, oh yeah, let's leave the home controller. So if I go to root get, so if it lands on invoice, then it goes to invoice controller, add index, and that's it. So let's run my server, go back to and I open this up. So it opens Laravel, and under invoice it should be blank. Wait, that's not right. Let's see what I did wrong. Oh yeah, so I never said view. It should return view, not just return. Alright, so now it should work fine. So if I go this, it's blank because my index folder is completely blank. Alright, so just to make speed things up a bit, under my resources, under invoice, I'm just going to copy this whole file over to index so that I have all the things. I'm just going to clear all the content, so it's going to be very empty. I'm just going to call this and this and this, and let's clear all the styles. So I'm just going to create here a list that says something like, okay, let's make a heading. Invoices. Let's just create a unordered list. Let's make it a button. That would be cool, yeah. So let's make it a div class btn primary, and call it invoice 1, and just duplicate that for a bit. Okay, let's leave that. Okay, so if I refresh this, I'm just going to leave it like that. I mean, you can style it nicer. Like I said, this is not a styling course. I don't want to waste a lot of time around that. And what I want to do now is I want to add a button on the bottom that says create invoice. I'm not sure what I try to do here. Okay. Okay, so yes, I create invoice button. So the next part is here, I want to navigate to the create page. So if I go here and I say create, then it should navigate over to invoice. But let's, rather than rename it appropriately, so let's make it a create field. All right, so obviously under here I'm just going to rename this to create. And I have to make sure under my roots, if I go to invoice create, then it goes to create. So let's try that. Okay, I just have to make a hyperlink, so if I click on create invoice, it goes over to that. So let's rename the div to A, and I just go put the href, and we go to invoice create. So let's see if that works. And yes, there we go. So as you can see, we have the invoice here, but nothing is interactable, and it's still just a HTML template. And I want to throw this over to VueJs so that I can start coding. So how do I do that? Let's go back to this file. I go to resource.js app. So I'm going to use this app. I'm just going to comment out Bootstrap, since we already have Bootstrap included into the template. And we can do something like this. In components, I want a new folder called invoice. And in invoice, I'm going to add a file called create.vue. So if I go here, I'm just going to call this, I usually go to the sequence of the folder, so I click invoice, dash create, and then navigate to the specific place of the file. So this is components invoice / create, and spelling is important again. Okay, so invoice create, and yes, if I go over here, there's nothing here obviously. What I'm going to do is now replace this, or not replace that, but insert it into the template. So in under create here, I'm going to move this I've moved this files, all this file over here. So the first step you do is just enter. Let's first create a standard template. So before we do that, let's just follow this. Let's just keep it there. Let's just start off with the template. So template would be like this, and underneath we have the script and export. So it's going to be data return. Let's just make the first variable, it's going to be false, and then we have mounted. Mounted means that as soon as the document is done loading, it will execute the following, and then there's the methods. And we can just enter our methods in here. So we can call, okay, let's leave it for later. And then we can go ahead, cut this and insert it in the template over here. So let's see if that works. It won't probably work because I've never actually executed. So the next part we do is, as soon as I have to open another PowerShell command window and say npm run watch. So as soon as you do any changes inside npm, then it will actually re-execute the script. So let's see. That still doesn't work. Let me see. Oh yes, important part I forgot. I never actually included the file, so I should include the app.js and the app.css. I just want to remove this as well. Since Bootstrap is already included, I don't want it included in my app.css. Okay, so let's just insert the files as well. So under create, let's just insert it here. So it's css.app.css, and that's completely wrong because that's a CSS file. Sorry, JS, then app.js. And for the link, the style sheet, it is relevance style sheet, and the href, that's css.app.css. And I think that's it. It should work now. Let's see. This is my console, so I can see if there's anything wrong. It cannot find the element app. So yes, that's another thing that I forgot to add, is that inside create, inside this create, this is not inside any tag that actually has the ID of app. So that means that Vue can't see where it should actually look for the VueJS components. So I'm just going to simply add a div with an ID of app, and then insert that over there. This should work fine. Let's see. Yes, as you can see, it's inserted. All right. So the next step is I want to list all the products. let's start with the start. I want a pop-up model window here as soon as I click on add new item to invoice. So what I usually use is simple model. So VueJS simple. This is a cool model thing for me. I really like it, but you can actually use Bootstrap's model as well. There's nothing specific you have to use. I just like to use this one. It's simple, lightweight, and for me it's very effective. So let's just quickly install it like that. They also explain how to include it. As soon as you want the simple model, you have to import it over here. So once you go to your view file and go down, you can just insert it over there, import some model from some model, and you have to add it as a component. Components is that. So just gonna insert it like that. And here is the simple model file you'll be using. So I can just insert it it should be within the parent div. So let's insert it there. And you will see it is a V model called isShow. You can call it to anything we like create, invoice. Let's call it insert new product model. That makes more sense. We can actually just copy that, insert it over here, and on standard it's false. So that means that if you open it, it won't open the model already, but if you say it's true, then it will open directly. So let's see if it's already installed. It's already installed. I can just go through it and say implement run watch again and see what happens. Okay, so let's click F5. Okay, so as you can see, it started opening already. So because it was true, set as true, it opened directly as soon as I open or refresh the browser. So, and that's probably not what we want. Maybe if we create a new invoice and you want the pop-up to appear first, then you can do that. I don't see any reason why you should. So let's give it false. However, if someone clicks on this, where's that? Oh yeah, add new item to invoice, then I want the pop-up to appear. So let me first show you what happens is if I click on add new item, nothing happens. If I click on add click and I say insert new product model equals true. So if I click on this button, then this equals true. Now it should work. Let's see. Voila, there it works. So now we want a drop down of all the items, the products. So let's first add some products over here. So yeah, let's open table. Let's add some products. I'm just going to add, let's add 4 products. So I'm just going to add that is $50 shirt. The shirt is $60. Pants $70, and socks are $20. It's very expensive things here. Okay, so once we go back, I want a drop down over here. Where are we? Oh yes, here we are. So my model, I just want to click in, let's see, call it, let's just say insert new item, and then we can say it's all added in the form, and then I want to select. For now, I'm just going to list dummy text just to see if it works well. Option, value in one and let's do it to like 3. And maybe we want quantity as well, so let's say input type number okay, let's see. Oh yeah, and let's just put some bootstrap class to it, CSS to it. Okay, so it's form control, and that's added to the select as well. Hopefully that looks nice. So here we can add the quantity. There's no indication that this is the quantity as well, so that's a problem. And we don't know if this is the product. So let's make that clear. Let's go to form group. I'm just going to add a label here, label. For, let's call this for item quantity. Let's just make the ID the same as the for, so that we know this label is for this input field. And the same goes with and I'm also going to create a label for this label. And the for is let's just call it the same for the ID. Let's see if it looks better. Yeah, that makes more sense. We just missed something. There's no add button or something like that. So let's just add it underneath here. You can actually call it button submit. Yeah, no, let's type submit. All right. I just forgot to actually put some styling to it, so I'm just going to call it button primary. All right. So let's see if I go to add new item, quantity of item and product. Now I want the default. I want the default as 1 because normally it's just 1. So let's just say input. Actually, that will be later on. We will have that. So for each item, what you can do is call it something like new item equals quantity 1 and product, and let's call it product ID, or we can create it call it the invoice item product IDs like in the database, and on default it's 0. So we can now actually go in here and assign the vModel. So we can say the vModel is new item dot quantity, and the vModel of this select is vModel is new item dot invoice item product. So if we refresh now, it's automatic on 1, and since no ID is 0, it won't have a default product, which we want. Otherwise, if we change this to 1, it will automatically select item 1, or 2, it will automatically select item 2. Let's see if that is the case. Okay, at item, yes, see, it automatically selected item 2. Sorry, my English escapes me sometimes. Okay, what's next? Okay, so the next part is we actually want, you know, the list to automatically update as from the table database. So as soon as you open, we want a real list from the database in here. Okay, so what we want to do is we need to do a query from the database to update the rows. So the first step we do is I like Axios, so let's install that first. VueJs Axios. Here it is. Like I said, you can always go directly to the link. I just wanted to show you the way to, you know, do it from scratch if you don't have all the resource files. Okay, so this is the way to install it. They always explain nicely how to do that. So you go to npm install save Axios view Axios. Let's just quickly add it over here. Once that's done, they explain you have to copy this, and just in your apps.js you can just paste it somewhere there underneath view. So now it imports Axios already. Okay, so what I'm now going to do now is I have to create a new route. So the new route is, I'm just going to call it something like, I want to get invoice items, get, you can call this anything you want, it's just the route you will be using. And under invoice controller, I'm just going to call the method get all invoice item products. I always like to be as much as informative as possible. Some people like to keep this short, and some people like me like to keep it explanatory. All right, so if I go inside here, and then under my invoice controller, I'm just going to create a public function and that name. So we already created the invoice item product. So I'm just going to use that on top of here. So it's going to use app invoice item product, and under here I'm just going to say products equals invoice item product all, because I want to get all the products. If you want to do something like you want to order them by name, then you can also do that. Nothing wrong with that. You can just say order by name and just call it, yeah, you can just leave it like that and just say get. Then you can say return success true, and I usually say data products. So now if I call this root, I will get all the products and JSON format. So let's see if that works. I go to 1 blah blah, and there you go. There's all the results in JSON format. That's exactly what you want. So now we know this route works. So if we go back to my Vue file, let's go to methods. I'm going to call get all invoice item product. Self that calls I'm just going to initiate new instance of this. Okay, so now I want to get the file, so I'm going to do view.axios dot get, and always put the / in the beginning of the root of every file. Okay, every get response. And after this happens, if there's something wrong, okay, so if data is gotten, if you get the data, okay, so we have the new item here, but we never actually initiate for all the products. So let's call it invoice item products is an empty array. As soon as this is initiated, I want self dot all the products equals response dot data, because as soon as you get the whole object, it's going to be, you can actually do something like this: var data equals response dot data. Let me explain you first what this does. Okay, as soon as we load the document, I want this to execute already, so I'm just going to in mounted, I'm just going to say, let's also do const self equals this over here, and then self dot that. So as soon as it's mounted, it executes this file here. And so what happens now is I want to basically print what is happening here. Console log data. Let me just explain what exactly is happening. So if I go to the project, and one thing I forgot is actually to run npm run watch. Okay, so if I go refresh, you will see here it is. So the data is the actual product list, and there's also a success parameter. So if you want to do something like this, you can say if data.success equals true, then continue, otherwise alert something went wrong. Which is cool about this is, for whatever reason, you can actually just go inside. There is actually better methods to do error control, but this is just a basic way that I can show you. So if you go back to this file over here, where it say success true. So let's say for whatever reason you wanted to return false if something else went wrong. For example, so this checks whether the first one exists. Let us just see what's happening. Okay. Oh yeah, I have to check that. If it doesn't exist, that should happen. Something went wrong. Okay, so it doesn't match the description over here. I want this message to display, so that's actually quite easy. I would just go here and go to create and say, okay, but if this is not true, then it should say data.message. So now it gets the message from this. So let's see if that works. Yes, damn it, man, something went wrong. All right, so okay. Let's see. I just want to go back to product and order by. I'm getting completely sidetracked by things I want to explain. All right, so let's go back and just see if it actually gets the right information. Okay, data, there's the information. We are already combining it with this invoice item products. I just want to quickly loop them through this list. So what we can do is just remove these, and I'm just going to say v for product in product. So you will see this is singular and this is plural. This has to be different than this. And then I want to say, and the key is let's just make it the invoice product.id, since each ID is unique anyway, so there's no problem there. Then the value, I want to make it the ID as well, so it's also going to be this each loop item dot ID. And for the name, it's obvious we want the name, so it should work now. Let's see. If I go back to this and I click refresh, well, it didn't. Oh yeah, because I never actually assigned to do that, because here is the invoice product items. I never actually said it should be assigned, so it's going to be data dot equals data dot data. So if I go back now, if I refresh, add new invoice item, there's a quantity, there's shared, here's the products of the database. I always assign this to 2. I don't want that. Let's go back to 0. As soon as I could do this, it's 0. Okay. New item. So okay, so let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to create a new one that says invoice items equals just an empty array, because there's nothing there. But each invoice item row should look like this. It would contain each invoice item row will have let's see, it will have an ID, an invoice ID, which is also null at the moment, invoice item product ID, which is null, and quantity, which is also null at the moment, and price, which is also null. Now this is the values we will have from the start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually remove it from here, and I'm going to add a new function that says new item row. So I would return this and this. So to make it easier, I want to pass in values inside here. So the first one will be the ID. Actually, let's leave it ID, because we don't know what the ID is yet unless it's saved to the database. The same goes with invoice ID. All I want to do is pass in the invoice item. Let's just correctly spell that item, invoice item product ID, and that will be in here as well, so that's good. I want to pass in the quantity, which will be this, and I want to pass in the price, which is this. Okay, so this generates a new item for each row here. Let me explain. If things are unclear, you guys have to let me know. But as I go, I'm also trying to figure this out. Okay, so let's see. So I want to create a new submit. As soon as this form submits, it should execute add new row. Let's call it add new row to invoice. So I'm just going to add a new method here with the e, because I don't want the form to actually reload the page. I'm just going to say e.prevent. and let's see what happens, because what is nice about this is now I can add required over here, so that it is required, not read only, required. Now this one as well. So if I go back to this and I add an invoice, I want to submit, it will say okay, this is required, because the quantity is already entered as default as 1, only this is required. If I click now, okay, nothing happens since I haven't added it actually. Okay, so cool thing is I can now create this. Oh yeah, let's also add the product in here as well. So I'm just going to say product equals that. Okay, so in here I can say invoice item products. Now this is the one I'll be using to loop through all the products. Oh, sorry, invoice items. This is the one I will be using to loop through all these. So what I'm going to do is, let's just put this as well, const self equals this. So what I want to do is, with this one here, let me just quickly go back to this one, invoice items. So self dot this, I want to push a new row. Before we continue with that, let's just create a variable equals self dot generate new row, and we'll pass in the variable, so we can actually just, as we created a new item, the quantity and the invoice product ID, let's insert here. So it's new item dot invoice item product ID. The second one is the quantity, so it's new item dot quantity. You see, I've misspelled quantity here. I just want to make sure it's correctly spelled in the whole document. And okay, before we continue, I just want to get the item of the product itself, so I'm just going to do a var product selected equals. Okay, so I just inserted this field over here because as soon as I want to add a new row, I just want the instance or a reference of the current object selected. So now I can continue and say, okay, product selected, new item quantity, and for the price, it's the product selected with price and with the product item inserted at the last one. Cool thing now is that I can just say invoice items, which is self dot invoice items dot push, and I can just push the new row. So this is quite cool because now I can loop through all the invoice items. Let's start with this one. So for item in items, and I'm going to use key, and in this one I'm going to v4 because I want the key inside here. So this is basically the index, so it starts from 0 and counts up. Okay, so product ID here, we don't actually have a product ID. Well, yeah, we actually do. So we can just say product items, and we are going to use the product inside here. So it's product dot product dot ID, inside brackets because it's dynamic. Here's the product name, and always remember it should be the singular in here. So it's dot product dot name. I don't actually have a product description right now, but if you add one, you can just add it here. Let's just leave it like that. Here it's also the invoice out the product dot price and product quantity and here it's the invoice dot quantity times the price. Let's see if that works. I just want to quickly delete the other rows because that's not necessary anymore. And that's just gonna confuse us more. Okay, so let's see if there's any error. I'm just going to create quantity and pants and add. There's a new item is not defined. Let's see where that is. Yeah, see, there's the problem. I actually and that's actually something I don't want to do. As you can see, yeah, new item quantity. Let's just add it there. Let's just see if that works now. Wait, where's that new item? Somewhere I'm missing something. Oh yes, here as well. Wow, I'm missing this as well because this is outside of the method. You should always say it's this current document because this new item is here. Okay. Product select and product select are both inside the method, so we don't need to determine or say itself. Okay, let's just see if that works now. And that works nicely, except for the total it's wrong. Actually, there's a couple of things that's wrong now. It didn't actually add the descriptions. Let me quickly, with each one, just check what is the console log. So console log self dot invoice items. Let's see what's wrong. Then I can see if I did something wrong here. Product dot price invoice item dot quantity. It could be that I am doing something incorrectly. Could be that it's here, but let's see. So if I go to this and I say hat, I have a quantity of 10. I said insert. Oh yeah, I never actually passed it in here. Let's see now. 18 product is pants. I add. That looks better. So we have pants here, we have the price, the quantity, and the total. And now we can actually add more stuff. Like 30, add, and there's the new item. Socks, add. Okay, so now that's working very nicely. Let's start off with subtracting 25% of the So the first part is I actually want to write a method that actually loops through all the objects and then calculates the price. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is going to a new method called So the first step I want to do is, let's see, let's create 3 models here. So I want to say total price equals, let's forget 0, and subtotal equals 0 and equals 0. So through each invoice items, I want to loop through. Const self equals this, and I want to loop through all Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, total price plus equals item quantity, and this, as soon as we refresh over here, let's see if this works. Quantity 13, product pants, add. And as you can see, price quantity is 910 and the grand total is 910. If we add another one hat, let's call it one hat, add, and 50, the grand total is 960. Okay, so the next step is I want to get a percentage quantity of a number. Okay, so to calculate the percentage, okay, so all you need to do is go to, okay, let's define the self dot, what is the percentage variable? Okay, percent price equals, okay, so since we subtract 25%, it's equals 25 divided by 100 times the actual value of the total price. So it's self dot total price. Let's quickly see if that works. So I'm including this. Oh yeah, let's see. Okay, yeah. Where's that? Okay, so yeah, 25%. I'm just inserting it there. And let's see. If I add something like 2 hats, then yeah, so the grand total is 100 and the tax is 25%. All we need to get is the subtotal, and that's relatively easy because all we need to do is go to subtotal and we just say self dot subtotals equals the self dot total price minus the self dot percentage price. So then we know this is what the subtotal will look like. So it's gonna be that. One thing that's kind of which doesn't look nice is that we don't have a currency. To add that, it's relatively easy. So you can see subtotal is 75, tax is 25, and the grand total is 100. But 100 what? So I'm just going to add dollar signs over here because for some reason we are using USA currency. You can also put it in here and here. So this looks a bit more familiar. If you do this and that, so you can see the price is $50, the quantity is 2, so the total is 100. The subtotal is 75 and the tax is 25. And the grand total is 100 bucks. Okay, so as soon as you add more stuff, you will see this increases. Now the tax is $55 and the subtotal is $165 and the grand total is $220. Okay, so yeah, this is basically it. Let's quickly make a remove column over here. So that you want to be able to remove a column if you wish to, because sometimes it does happen that yeah, you want to remove a column. All right, so the next step is let's just add a minus somewhere, maybe add a new row, a new column. So what I'm going to do here is just call something called action. Let's make it all caps. I'm just going to make a new table data over here, and I'm going to make a new button called dev class btn I wonder if there's a danger button. Let me see. I've never actually tested that. Yes, okay, so there's the delete. So once we click on that, we want to remove this row. So what we're gonna do is, since we use the key, we can actually create an action. let's say remove product from invoice, and we can just actually pass in the key here. So with self dot invoice items dot splice so we're going to use the indexed and just say 1. Let's see if this works. Remove that. We're going to add it over here. Where's that? So at click, we execute this with the key that we get from here. So let's see if that works. And if we get an error, we can see what the error is. So at item 12, let's just add a bunch of things. No, not a bunch of, yeah, let's just add something like that. And delete, delete, delete. Okay, so that works nice. So it's actually pretty cool. As you can see, it works nice. So if you want to remove the socks, you can just delete and it gets updated. Okay, so basically this is the where how to make this work. Okay, let's quickly add the invoice here. But actually, since the invoice is not created yet, we can't add the reference number here yet. As soon as the invoice is created, this will get populated. But yeah, so this is how the VueJs site will work like. In the next video, I will explain how to actually save this to the database.